Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Brand Builder Show. Today we're going to be talking all things supply chain, financing, whether you should sell your business or try and scale your business. We've got so much to talk through today, and I'm glad to have Dana on the show with me from 8Fig. Dana, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much. It's actually Donna. We should have gone over this.
We should have gone over
No
that.
worries.
Sorry, that's poor
No
podcaster
worries.
prep. You live and you learn.
No worries. There's really no way to mispronounce your name, so I can't get you back, unfortunately.
You could call me Bean or Bon or I don't know. There's
Bean
maybe
it is.
yeah.
Bean
When
it
I went to New Zealand a few years ago, and I'm called Bin there, so
is. Bin.
that's pretty bad. Like a trash can. So we call
It's
a trash can Bin in the UK.
it's unique.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's no sort of offensive connotation to Dana. It's just not my name.
Sorry, Dana. Great to have Dana on
worries.
the show. Yeah, cut. Great to have Dana on the show. Thanks so much for joining us, and looking forward to diving into this. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us a little bit about 8Fig, and then we'll dive into the questions today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on your show. So I'm Donna. I'm 8Fig's VP of Product, and 8Fig is a holistic solution for e-commerce sellers to grow their stores, whether that's on Amazon, Shopify, eBay, Walmart, et cetera, et cetera. And we help sellers grow their stores in a number of ways, one of which is funding, of course, providing capital in order to execute any stage of a seller's supply chain. And then other ways include helping out with custom tools for planning supply chain, for managing its execution, coming soon also booking various parts of its execution, and then analytics.
Nice. And how long has 8Fig been around?
A little over 2 years, and it's been such a wild ride so
Yeah.
far. We're so fortunate to have amazing sellers by our side for a better part of those 2 years, but also new sellers coming in all the time.
Geez, yeah. You were saying about all the stuff you're doing. I'm thinking you're going to say 10 years, 15 years, 2 years. That's some rapid growth.
And you know what? It's been 2 years plus, and it's felt like, I don't know, 6 months, because it's just go go go. It's nonstop.
Yeah. Yeah, and we were connected because one of our Brand Builder University members has actually used your services, growing rapidly with their business, and has used your services to keep growing quickly, and so it's amazing that you guys are. It feels like you are really championing the sellers, and you are resourcing them to keep growing, keep winning. So it must be an exciting role you get to play to see all this, see all these victories happening.
Absolutely. So we're fortunate enough to have really a front row seat to all of these sellers' growth. But it's exactly what you said. We're aiming to really champion these sellers and look at their benefit in every single new feature that we roll out, in every experience, in every tool that we develop, so that first and foremost, they're experiencing the growth that they're capable of, that the demand out there dictates, and then that they can conquer more and more as they go by making every single process in their business more efficient. So we were talking a little bit about, right before we hit play, we hit record, we were talking about the quintessential seller profile of this just perpetual hustler, this person who's the immaculate generalist, knows absolutely everything about everything, and can handle anything that you throw at them. So that's what's really amazing about these sellers. A lot of times they have absolutely everything that it takes in order to grow. They just lack capital, and sometimes they lack a little bit of focus. Prioritize for me. What should I tackle first? And that's where 8Fig comes in.
Yeah, that's so good. So good. So you must, you definitely have a unique insight into the journey of sellers really scaling their business. And that's what we want to dig into today. We've got real sort of three core sections that we want to go through in this interview today. And the first one is about supply chain. As you mentioned, you guys would be really getting into the weeds with sellers, kind of pulling up your sleeves and helping them optimize supply chain. And that's what I love about your proposition is it's not just, hey, here's a whole bunch of money, go spend it. It's how do you use this to optimize the supply chain journey and many other aspects, of course, but specifically on supply chain. Talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing with your most successful clients. What are they doing right now in the continued crazy times that we're living in to really optimize that supply chain and actually enable that fast growth.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with continuing unprecedented supply chain chaos, right? And it's not like back in 2020, 2019, supply chains were these like stable, reliable machines. We were always seeing a lot of shifts in those and a lot of delays and things like that, but really nothing like we saw happen more or less from Q2 2021 and onward, and we're still seeing now. So, to your question, what we're seeing some of our sellers do that's very, very effective is first and foremost having a plan. And that seems so trivial, but a lot of sellers, and you'd be surprised, even at the early seven-figure stage, they can see maybe in their planning horizon up to the next order, maybe the next two orders, but really beyond that, they like to play it by ear. They like to sort of wait and see, so to speak, for fluctuations in demand, for fluctuations in competition, various things that we see impact the need to be well stocked. However, having that plan, having a greater horizon, let's say 6 months, 1 year of supply chain planning, is so, so central to actually being able to make big moves and achieve big goals. Because when you're looking ahead, let's say 1 year of supply chain planning, that's 4 quarters, right? Each one of them has its unique characteristics in terms of demand, in terms of events, in terms of promotions. And so you have the majority of the data that you need to rely on based on just historical performance, right? So you know more or less how much you're going to need to order, and you also know more or less how much you've grown to date. Beyond that, you can make simple projections. I'm not saying that they're going to be accurate, okay? They're definitely going to be questionable, but you can make some predictions as to what you're going to need in, now in Q2 2023. And absolutely, a couple months ago, you could have made those projections for Q4 2022. So having that plan, ensuring that you're first and foremost securing the capital for it, and then leaving yourself some sort of margin to then be flexible and be able to pivot, which is also something that 8Fig allows. Just shameless plug there.
That's
Flexibility is kind of a big part of what we do.
Yep.
That is really the number one distinguisher that we see.
Yeah, that's good.
And
Very
it
good.
doesn't, and that's true for really any stage that you're in as a seller, whether you just hit 6 figures, really starting to take this seriously, versus you're on the verge of 8 figures and this is now a machine.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a good kind of segue into the second question or sort of section when it comes to funding, which is obviously a big topic of discussion and maybe the meatiest of the topics because of your sort of speciality in that subject.
Yeah, certainly.
When it comes to that flexible financing, what are the options that sellers do have, whether that's with 8Fig, or just generally? What are the options, the most common options that a seller that's growing and says, man, the cash flow is a challenge here, as we know with physical product businesses. I need some help to help this to keep growing. What are the main options that a seller would have?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting when talking about our funding solution, how many different ways there are to describe it, and that's honestly a challenge for our marketing team more than anything, because how are we going to frame this thing that's so multi-layered, that's so beneficial in so many ways, in just some quick, punchy, I get this immediately type of messaging, and the way that 8Fig funding works, which is fundamentally different than really any capital solution out there, especially when you're talking just about e-commerce, is that we completely separate the two main streams of capital. One is crediting the seller for whatever they need to use the capital for, and the other one is remitting back those funds, right? Those two operate completely independently of each other, and here's what I mean. So sellers, let's say, they plan their supply chain, and we refer to them in our system as lines. Each order is a line, so order, batch, line. I'm always talking about the same thing. And the seller plans, all right, here's the units that I'm going to purchase, and here is when I'm going to pay everyone along my supply chain, my manufacturer and my freight forwarder and my 3PL and my marketing, and then any other expenses some sellers do. And then 8Fig runs that through our own risk analysis model. We decide, okay, can we fund this? Sometimes we recommend to the seller, hey, by the way, you could probably sell 50% more units than this or 20% less, whatever it happens to be. But then that's your funding. You're secure for however many lines or orders or batches are coming into the future. Typically, we see a plan for about 1 year. Okay. On the other hand, we do what's called cash flow friendly remittances. So those remittances are planned, not like pretty much every other solution does, which is, okay, we gave you money today, you're going to start repaying us tomorrow, yes? This is very ineffective for most businesses, but especially for e-commerce businesses, which see a huge gap in time between having to pay for goods, having to pay for COGS in general, and seeing revenue from those COGS, right? Mm-hmm. We're talking months, okay? 3-5 months between paying and actually seeing revenue. So 8Fig remittances are actually scheduled to align with a predicted sales pace for each batch, okay? So you're seeing that delay, of course, built in, but also you're seeing our prediction for however much the seller sells. Now, like I said, everything is dynamic, everything is flexible. So let's say, moment of truth, you start selling and you're actually selling, I don't know, 50% less, like something pretty significant than what 8Fig had predicted, you had predicted. You can just log in, submit a request to slow down the remittances. That takes, on average, about 1 business day turnaround, and then your remittances are changed. There's typically, in like 99% of cases, no impact to the cost of capital, which means it's just very much geared towards the seller's business's well-being and longevity and actual sustained growth.
Yeah. Okay. And can sellers just only do one line at a time?
No, in fact, our sellers do typically. Well, it depends on whether they're Amazon, Shopify, or other platforms. But on Shopify, we see more lines simultaneously just because their stores tend to have more products. So you're never just operating one supply chain order, right? You're always mixing and matching. But the number tends to be higher on Shopify. And then all of that condenses into one single cash flow friendly remittance plan. Mm-hmm. Okay. And it's all subject to the same flexibility. So if you need to report a delay, if you need to report a slowdown in sales, if you need to report, let's take another example taken from real life. Hey, my freight shot up 50%. That's all just a couple of clicks.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I know obviously you would sort of customize a lot of this and might not be too many standardized things, but if you could say like a normal cost of borrowing, would there be a figure that you could put on it if someone borrows, say, 100K?
So on 100K, they could expect to remit back to 8Fig a cost of capital of $6,000 to $10,000.
That's cheap.
It is cost effective, yes.
Oh yeah, you probably don't want to say cheap, but it's not in a bad way. I mean, as in
cost effective, cash flow friendly. I've got marketing, looking behind my shoulder.
It's not cheap. Yeah.
No, it's not cheap.
No, I good value for the seller is what I'm saying. I think
absolutely, and the value, like I mentioned, I touched on a little bit earlier, is really all encompassing. So it's not just about getting your capital in order. It's a huge part of it. Huge part of growth is securing that capital and ensuring that it's cash flow friendly so that you're not, like I said, receiving funds in order to grow your business and then turning around and the next day you've got to start remitting those funds or repaying those funds. That's not going to help you grow. That's just going to add another source of stress for these sellers who are already doing so much. So with 8Fig, that part is sort of handled, let's say. So you've got the cash flow friendly remittance plan. You've got the peace of mind of knowing that you're booked about a year in advance, again, on average. Mm-hmm. So that acts as sort of a CFO for your company that you can sort of, okay, I got this is taken care of, and I've got the flexibility to pivot or refinance anytime I need. And now I can focus on the other facets of my business, like the planning, like the analytics, like monitoring the marketing campaigns really effectively.
Yeah.
selecting new products, engaging in launches, new platforms, just you name it. That to-do
Yeah.
list is never ending.
Yeah. No, definitely. Definitely. No, okay. And then for a seller to be able to use services like yourselves, where do they need to be at? What's a good time to be looking at this?
So we've got, in terms of just our top line criteria, we work with six-figure sellers and above, but it could also be a run rate of six figures. So if you can demonstrate $8,000 a month in the last 3 months, we're happy to work with you and get you to that next level.
Hmm.
Just based on our risk modeling, that's really a place where sellers are at a very, very good jumping off point in order to streamline some things and get some really meaningful growth.
Yeah.
In terms of when a seller, more from a state of mind perspective, is ready to take on financing, that's more subjective.
Hmm.
But generally speaking, as soon as you start taking this business more seriously and you start to consider things like hiring people and getting more orders and enlisting more and more products, there is probably, I can almost guarantee, there is some uncapitalized, um, un- untapped potential
Yeah.
in that demand that you can seize, usually with some working capital.
Definitely. And then in terms of the amount that someone could borrow, if someone's listening to this and they're thinking, well, I'm doing 10, 15 grand a month, I might like to borrow 200 grand to, buy a whole load of inventory. That's probably not going to be possible. Again, are there some parameters that you work within for that?
Yeah, those parameters are more, within the risk team, but I can say it's a very, very wide gamut. So we will typically fund more than anyone else for growth. We're risk takers like that. But we'll also, if I'm just looking at, the plans that we've got being activated on a daily basis, probably the smallest one is going to be around $30,000, and then the largest ones I've seen 19, $20 million. So
Sheesh.
it just really depends. Yeah, yeah, but you know what? They're killing it.
Yeah, yeah,
Both of them, both the 30,000 and the 19 million are
yeah,
killing it. So it's just about how much you want to grow, and then again, remember, it's all flexible. So we have an unofficial internal thing that we say over at 8fig to sellers is how much could you sell if money were no object? And
mm,
then based on that, make your plan.
mm,
Because 9 times out of 10, we'll go along for the ride with you.
yeah. That's
We
awesome. I
want to
like
see
that.
how high is high.
Yeah, I love that. There's an entrepreneurial mentality within that, which is, sometimes
Absolutely.
rare in financing organizations. So it's, yeah, it's good. There's, in terms of the ability to then take that money and do something with it, a lot of people will often think, well, I don't want to take on debt, I'm worried about that. What do you say to the nervous seller that's unsure about whether taking on financing is the right option for them?
Yeah, I definitely understand hesitations around debt in general, not just from a business perspective, but also from a personal perspective. We're always kind of worried about, am I ready for that next step? But really, you have to look at what you're depriving potentially of your business by not taking on that debt. And unfortunately, sometimes we also see sellers decide to even sell their business instead of taking on debt in order for it to continue to grow, which is just handing someone else, all that future revenue on a silver
Yeah,
platter, right?
yeah,
Which that's your baby. You know it better than anyone.
mm,
So I would say that what 8fig has brought to the table is a very effective way to obtain financing, not just from a cost effective perspective, but also that flexibility. So you make a plan, which I understand is nerve wracking, but you know that you can pivot that plan as you need. You're always going
yeah,
through with either a single order or a number of orders, and then whatever the future may bring, if there's a slowdown or if there's an acceleration, which we see just as often, you're still going to be able to pivot and adjust your funding up or down and adjust your remittances up or down.
yeah. No, that's really helpful advice, and it's a great segue. You're a pro at this into sell or scale, right? You mentioned there about the
Yeah.
sellers feeling that pressure that they need to sell. I think obviously the last 18 months has it involved a lot of pressure because there's this aggregator boom and everybody feels like they got to sell while it's hot, and evidently that has cooled down, and so some
Yeah.
sellers maybe don't have as much of an option to sell as they once did have. But from the sounds of it, you're pretty pro keeping the business, scaling it up. Whereas it feels like the last couple of years, the e-commerce, especially Amazon FBA kind of space, everyone has just been obsessing over this idea of selling your business. Guilty as charged. We've talked about it a lot, but it's been the talk of the town. But maybe you're coming at it from a different angle. Talk to me a bit about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's a great question because I've also noticed that that undeniable gravitation towards, all right, when am I going to sell my business? How much am I going to sell it for? And no one asking, should I sell my business, right? At a certain point, just people stopped asking that.
Mm.
And I was very, very curious about it because from our viewpoint, right, we've got these tremendously successful stores, right?
Yeah.
Tremendously profitable stores. If you drill down to the unit economics, those margins are phenomenal. Yeah, kind of hard to run from an operational perspective. Supply chains are not the friendliest, most reliable, predictable thing in the world. But just in general, why would you sell? And also, why would you sell for the valuations that we've traditionally seen in the aggregator space? So what I did is I spoke to a lot of sellers about it, like a lot, and I was trying to really understand what that was about because what we were also seeing was a very curious phenomena of sellers selling and then waiting a couple months and then you know getting right back on the train, on
Yeah.
the ecom train, starting another store. So I learned a lot of really, really interesting things like the need to de-riskify, take out personal risk from it,
Yeah.
the need to even from a psychological point, prove to your loved ones that this is a legit business and look at it, look what it's brought us. And I completely understand that. So by no means am I saying that it's the wrong decision. It can be a phenomenal decision. It really depends on the individual seller. But I
Yeah.
would challenge anyone who's considering it to take a look at the reasons why they're doing it. Is it a working capital problem? There are solutions for that. Is it an operational problem? There are solutions for that. You know?
Mm.
So look at what your motivator is for getting your business sold. Look at the valuation, and then look at your upside, and then try to make those connections and draw those conclusions for yourself. And if you can, continue to scale your own business and reap the fruits of your own labor.
Mhm.
Nothing's going to be better.
Yeah, for sure. The mention about de-riskifying, taking risk, taking some money off the table. Is
Yeah.
it? Would you say it's generally advisable, not advisable to use a service like yours? Say someone's got a business doing, 2-3 million a year, and rather than selling it for say 2 million or something like that, they think, well, I could take 500,000 in financing, and take X amount of money out of the business. And keep that personally and use some of that to finance the growth of the business, but also take some of it out to take risk off the table. Is that bad practice? Is that advisable?
So that's a pretty, I think, unique use case of using funding in order to de-riskify. And I do want to clarify also that we have many, many sellers who've chosen to sell their stores after usually a sustained phenomenal period of growth with
Hmm.
8 Fig for usually personal reasons. Honestly, I want to spend more
Yeah,
time with my family. I want to
yeah,
reap these rewards, etc. And that's again perfectly fine. We're super happy for them, and honestly, in probably more than 50% of cases, whoever bought out the company continued to use 8Fig as their source of capital because of the various advantages. But when it comes to de-riskifying, it's such a personal decision that I don't feel qualified to tell any individual seller whether or not it's the right decision. I can
yeah,
say
sure.
if you need more money for inventory and that's keeping you up at night, then fret not, there's 8fig. If
Yeah.
you need cost-effective capital that's also flexible so that you know that you can adjust it up or down, and that's keeping you up at night, then there's 8fig.
Yeah, that's good. Do most sellers just use the services temporarily, say for like Q4 financing, and then leave it for the rest of the year, or do you find that most sellers, once they start, they kind of get into a routine of using it on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, actually, it's probably more towards the latter. We're very fortunate to have become essentially the funding arm of so many e-commerce sellers across platforms, because once they start using it and they see that we can really solve for that really annoying cash flow crunch, we call it, of having to pay for goods months in advance of seeing any revenue from it, and helping them constantly just not feel it at all because they're never remitting for things that they're not selling. It becomes just a very effective tool for them to keep growing and keep executing ever growing lines without ever sort of jeopardizing their own growth and their own cash flow.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. So I should have asked this earlier on the funding thing, but in terms of timelines, a typical timeline of repaying a certain line of credit, what would you generally look to have it all paid off by?
Yeah, so they're not lines of credit. I understand the confusion because we call them lines, but they're batches of inventory, supply chain, and the remittance part is separate from the crediting part. So really those schedules operate on just two completely different timelines. So you're looking at, let's say, an overall plan level, which we said is like a year's worth of planning. You're looking at that as the general sort of time frame for repaying, or let's say 9 months out of that 12 months, you're remitting back to 8fig. But what's important to remember there is that you have flexibility, right? You have total control of what's going on, and you can constantly request from 8fig to adjust up or down, especially when it comes to remittances, which are meant to be aligned with your sales pace, predicted sales pace, and then actual sales pace once they actually start selling. So at that point, really, the timeline again branches out even more separately from the crediting part.
Yeah, good. Okay. Good. Is there anything that I haven't asked that you feel will be valuable for the audience to know about the topics we've talked about?
I think if I could make one recommendation, we're sitting here in our cushy chairs on middle of June 2022. Q4 is the farthest from anyone's mind. Everyone's maybe thinking about more things like Prime Day and Father's Day coming up next week. So I urge sellers listening, think about Q4. Those orders, those lines from your manufacturers need to probably be already in motion. And if not, let's get them in motion. The supply chain disruptions that we experienced last year are by no means gone, unfortunately, but we can handle them. And then also, I know that there's been a lot of talk about e-commerce demand and not being really sure of where that's going, especially for this upcoming Q4. I would urge a conservative stance there, and to ensure that you are well stocked, because you don't want to be understocked for what's coming.
Yeah, for sure. Sage advice. I like it. That's good. If people want to find out more about 8fig and the services you offer and explore the options, where is the best place to find you?
The best place to find us is, of course, 8fig.co. That is our website. You can also make an account and start playing around with the tool, apply for funding, or if you want to just use us for the planning and the analytics, that's perfectly fine too. We hope that we can be of added value there. Additional places you could find us are Twitter, Instagram, 8fig.co. We'd love to talk. We'd love to get to know you.
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll leave all the links, obviously, in the show notes, in the description on YouTube and everything. Dana, thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Ben.
Yeah, I was going to call you Dana, but as a joke, but I thought maybe you wouldn't get it. So Dana, sorry.
I would have gotten it.
the bad intro. I do apologize, but thank you for your grace with me. Awesome, guys. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
joining us. Thanks for joining us on the show today. If you do want to check out 8fig, I encourage you. Like I say, we've got community-backed endorsements of this great company, and so definitely do check them out. And whilst you are surfing the web, do leave us a review for the podcast. That we really appreciate your support on the show, and we'll see you in the next episode next week.